There we go. Now, we can finally have a serious, good discussion. Forge gang, I'm still a hard man. Let's go. Alright, so I'm pretty much sick of these dubhead retards. These stupid people that because they only watch the English or the Spanish dub, and all they do is get the wrong ideas about things. And this is what you would expect of them. Anime dub-onlyists are dull knuckleheads, and they don't understand or get nothing about anything, any kind of fan show, whether it's Star Wars, Dune, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, any kind of fantasy-based franchise, any kind of franchise, any of it, period. You have these cringe knuckleheads that think that because, some 1980s Japanese cartoon show was so good, and any sort of remake, any sort of modern remake after that is going to be bad. Well, you might be right about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and She-Ra. Yeah, I mean, obviously. That show in the 1980s was top-notch and was good, and all the modern recreations of He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, is going to suck. Is going to absolutely suck because of the woke garbage. Yes, I get that. But Dragon Ball, not so much. Like, come on, guys. You can do so much better than that. You know that with the dubs, Dragon Ball Z is going to be better than all the rest of it. But in the original Japanese, I mean, it's going to work perfectly. Dragon Ball Z, GT, Kai, Super, and Heroes, and now Daima. So, number one, if you're only watching the dub, you're not getting the full thing. Because the dub, especially the old Funimation dubs and Ocean dubs, get everything wrong about Dragon Ball Z. If you watch it in Japanese, it'll make a lot more sense. If you watch the entire thing in Japanese, you're going to understand that it's fundamentally a completely different rodeo altogether. The dub is incomplete, and it's awful. And watching Dragon Ball GT in English, that is a awful dub. When you watch that dub, Dragon Ball GT, or the original Dragon Ball in the English dub, it's going to be bad. Absolutely. But if you watch it in Japanese, you're going to get a much more fulfilling and just a much better rundown of it. Dragon Ball GT in Japanese is completely different from the English dub. So, two things you need to understand. The Japanese don't care about canon. The Japanese do not give a shit about what is canon and not canon. And neither did Toriyama. Another thing, too, Akira Toriyama was a gag manga artist, okay? He was not a action mangaka writer. He was a gag manga. He did Dr. Slump and a bunch of one-shot mangas. And they were all full of gags and jokes and absurdities and stuff. And he did the same thing when he wrote Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was originally not supposed to be serious. It was not supposed to have a serious nature to it. And it was just to be about a bunch of jokes around martial arts fighters. And then in the Frieza arc, everything changes and gets a lot more serious. Because the Frieza arc is one of the most serious, blood-drenched, epic fighting arcs of that entire franchise. And then everything else tends to be a lot more, gag-oriented. And even the Frieza arc has its jokes and its gags. So, you dubheads are not getting it. You're not getting the full scope of what's actually going on. And Geekdom 101 has a very good rundown of some of the original sketches. And there's a scene with Piccolo and Raditz, and you see the number. It says Dragon Ball episode 154. Okay? So, the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z are directly linked. And originally, GT was the successor to Z. And if you watch the entire thing in Japanese, including the movies, you would understand that it fits in neatly. Now, Toriyama did not do GT. That doesn't mean that GT is not canon, it's just that Akira Toriyama wasn't involved. But Super and Daima are Akira Toriyama's creations. And all you have to do is just go and look at his interviews on Kanzenshu.com. It's all there. It's all been translated by Herbs. It's all there. And it says very well that the Japanese don't care about canon. That canon stuff is an invention of the dub. Just like everything else. If you're only watching the dub, then you're not getting what's actually going on. That there is an entire show before Raditz, and there's an entire segment of stuff after Majin Buu. So, you're not getting the entire picture. There's no canon. If you enjoy the movies, if you like Broly, if you like Janemba, if you enjoy the movies and you enjoy the Garlic Jr. arc, then you're going to enjoy GT because the people that did the movies worked on GT. It's the same staff, it's the same music composers, the same animators. It's the same team. They did all three of those shows in the 90s. Nobody seriously had any idea when they were doing Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z that 20 years later they would do Kai and Super. And the only reason why Dragon Ball Super even exists is because of Evolution. Dragon Ball Evolution was a box office flop. That's why they went back and did Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, because of Evolution. So, you dubheads have been completely misinformed about the entire thing all along, okay? There's sketch and panel artwork of Piccolo and Raditz on the hilltop in the first episode of Z. And there's titles that say Dragon Ball Episode 154. Because it was clearly going to be Dragon Ball Episode 154. And it was the episode right after the episode where Goku goes to the Cauldron of 8 Divinations with Chi-Chi. And he has the Bancho fan and he helps Grandpa Gohan and Anin, the goddess, to seal up the Cauldron of 8 Divinations. That's Dragon Ball Episode 153. And right next, after that, is Dragon Ball Episode 154 that was then changed to Dragon Ball Z Episode 1, where Gohan is in the forest, Raditz arrives in the attack ball, Piccolo has a very brief standoff with Raditz, kind of cowboy style. And it's very clear that the Saiyan arc is after the 23rd Tournament arc. It is 5 years after the 23rd Tournament arc. Akira Toriyama never planned to end Dragon Ball after the first 13 original episodes, because he clearly had in mind that he was going to do the 21st tournament. That's fake news. Akira Toriyama clearly had in mind to have Mecha Frieza fight future Trunks. In a chapter that introduces future Trunks and Mecha Frieza 1 week after the end of the Namek stuff. So all this information that, Akira Toriyama planned to end it with the Frieza arc, that's misinformation. That's outdated misinformation. There's nothing in any of the interviews of Akira Toriyama or any of the CEOs of Toei that indicates that they were going to end it with the Frieza arc or the Cell arc or even the Majin Buu arc, because they planned to do 200 episodes of GT. GT originally was going to be 200 episodes, and they scaled it down to 30, and then they branched it up to 64 episodes. All of that stuff was from the original team. The same animation team that did Dr. Slump and O'Reilly-chan did Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, including all the movies, all the 13 original movies, from Garlic Jr. to Harudegarn, and the 3 Dragon Ball movies, and then GT. It was all the same animation team and staff that did it. The only difference is that Akira Toriyama stopped doing the manga. He finished the manga because he went back to do more Dr. Slump, as well as some one-shot mangas, and he went back to doing video game designs for Chrono Trigger. And he also got bored with it, so he stopped doing Dragon Ball. So they went and they did GT. And they were originally going to do 32 episodes, but they ended up doing 64 episodes. And then they also did a 10th anniversary Dragon Ball movie, The Path to Ultimate Power. All that stuff was done by the same team. And Akira Toriyama was involved in doing Dragon Ball Super. He was involved in Daima. So Super and Daima are now canon. You can just look at the interviews on Kanzenshu. He did not work on Super Dragon Ball Heroes or Dragon Ball Heroes. That was another team or another group that did that entirely. There is a promotional manga. It's called the Dragon Ball Super manga. It was done by Toyotaro. That was done with Akira Toriyama's assistance up until he died. You guys take this way too serious. You're getting misinformation, and you're listening to the wrong people, and you're getting the wrong ideas. So, Akira Toriyama is a gag, or was a gag manga artist. That was his thing. I don't know how better to explain this. But anyways, that was just my rather schizo rant. Not really schizo, but just my rant about it. So we have Interdimensional Lizard saying it's Forge Gang versus Dub Gang tonight. That is true! It's the truth! Alright, so... my goodness, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. Assad has been overthrown. Bashar al-Assad has been overthrown in Syria. a corporate CEO has been unalived on the streets of New York, just fallen asleep, and the suspect has been charged. Yeah, a lot of crazy shit has been happening, and these people are worried to death about how the dub, which is not even the original plot of Dragon Ball, is so important to them. Well, you get owned, punks. I'd break it down even more, but I don't see what the point is. But yeah, Dubheads are not fans. Not just in Dragon Ball or any shonen, but just anywheres. It can be Star Trek, it can be Dune, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. It could be any fantasy-based genre. And these people will pick and choose what they want. They will pick and choose the things that they want. There's a lot of people that do not like the new Star Trek stuff. There's a lot of people that don't like the 2000 Star Trek Into Darkness reboot. But it's there. There's a lot of people that don't even like the Star Wars prequels. But that is what has been done. It was sold to Disney. They're going to use it for the most wackiest political correct and inclusivity nonsense that they can come up with. Because that is where Hollywood is going. Japan is going to emulate Hollywood. And so they're going to create the wokest, most inclusive shit as well. And that's just the way it's going to be. Donald Trump being president is not going to change a thing. He's not going to scale back a single thing that Joe Biden or Barack Obama did, or George Bush has done. He's not going to scale back. It's going to be 4 years of absolutely nothing, and then we're going to go right back to the same stuff that we had before. Nothing is going to be changed, and these yahoos out here, these yo-hos, don't know anything about dubs, and so you guys are not fans. You guys are not real fans of any fantasy-based stuff. You put politics, you put your political outlooks and your politics into these fantasy things that you got into when you were kids, and then you grew up and you got into politics, and everything around you became centered on your culture-oriented, political-oriented cultural outlook. And that's why you're more disappointed now as opposed to when you were younger, because you weren't trying to put politics or equate politics into the fantasy shows. So, nothing has changed. Dragon Ball is before Dragon Ball Z. The original plan of Dragon Ball Z Episode 1, where Raditz appears, was going to be titled Dragon Ball Episode 154. And it was going to run right after the Cauldron of 8 Divinations and the Goku Chi-Chi wedding. That is a fact, and you're going to have to just suck it up. The movies weren't necessarily intended to go into the mainstream timeline. That's true. But they're there. I don't think there's going to be a lot of contention with the movies, but the movies are there. They happen, they take place. Akira Toriyama says it happens in a different dimension. The future Trunks timeline is there. You yo-hos, yahoos, that don't like the future Trunks stuff, it's there. Dragon Ball GT was done by the same animation staff and team and design teams. Akira Toriyama contributed to the designs of Gero and the spaceship. Dragon Ball GT was originally intended to be canon. Nothing you say is going to change that. Dragon Ball Super was directly created with Akira Toriyama's direct involvement. Dragon Ball Super is very much canon. Nothing that you can say is going to change it. Dragon Ball Daima is currently airing. The dub is about to be released on Netflix. And it is there, it's canon. There's even a Ranma 1.5 reboot. They've done a Yaruzi Yatsura reboot. Now they're doing Ranma and a half. They're going to probably do an Inuyasha reboot as well. So it's there, and you dubheads just cope and seethe. Rick Perry says, Forge Gang! Star Trek the motion picture equals transhumanism. Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan is utilitarianism. The group over the individual ethic. I think Star Trek was transhumanist with the pilot episode. Star Trek, with its pilot episode, was already very transhumanist. I actually watched The Squire of Gothos tonight. That's where the Squire of Gothos got his little stupid retarded name from. Ooh, Squire of Gothos. Spooky. Just stole it from Star Trek. So, I guess that's it. Dubheads, get wrecked.